It's been raining, there's thunder, there's lightning, so definitely a soup day. What do you guys think? Let's make some. All right, so we're going to go with some minestrone today. It's going to be perfect with that weather outside. So all you're going to need for this is a big pot, a cutting board and a knife for preparing your veggies, a spatula for sauteing, a spoon for your garlic and anything else that comes up, and a ladle. Nice, easy, clean. So let's get to cooking that minestrone. Minestrone is one of those soups I really love on days like this when it's rainy. It's delicious. It's not that hard to make. It saves for several days, so you can have it for all the rainy days when the storm's passing through. And it's just got a great flavor profile. It's one of those ones where you can just throw a bunch of stuff into the pot, mix in some broth or stock, and call it a soup. So let's start there. We're going to go with a chicken stock. You can also do broth if you want. I personally like the stock. You're going to want one that's about 4 cups. Depending on how much soup you want to make, you might need more than that, but I'd start there. And then we've got a lot of veggies that are going into this. So first of all, let's say the baby spinach, which I'm going to tell you that has to go in at the very, very end. Just in case I don't mention that later, very, very end. You're also going to have some celery, onions. We're doing a Mexican zucchini today, but a regular one's fine. Petite diced tomatoes, frozen peas, and carrots. Now, if you want to save yourself some time, you can get a frozen veggie blend that's got peas, carrots, green beans, and usually corn. That works out too. Also put that in the end. You don't want them to overcook. And I usually put in some sort of a bean. Kidney is the one I go to most often, but I have some black beans that I use for some nachos, so I'm going to use the rest of those up. And then you're also going to want some pasta. You can use any of the small ones. I'm going with elbow today, but you can do the macaroni, the small shells, any of that. But if you wanted to have a bigger pasta, go ahead, it's all good. It's all a matter of what you want. So the spices are where it's going to really pop, and you're going to want it to be very Italian flavored. So start with some garlic. Now you can have an Italian blend and add the extra spices if you want more flavor, or you can just leave out the blend and make your own. The basic ones you want are oregano, rosemary, thyme, basil. You can also add some parsley in there if you want. I personally don't, but that's just a me preference. And then salt and pepper to taste. Now, if you wanted it to be vegetarian or vegan, you could go with vegetable stock. And I'm pretty sure that would be vegetarian or vegan at this point. I'm not positive though. If you're one of the two, you'll know. Or you want some extra meat, I find sausages go really well into there. Today we're using some chicken one. And that's it. You can throw in other vegetables, other squash. I've had some with broccoli in it and cauliflower. Like I said, it's just kind of a throw whatever you want in the pot and just go from there. The other really great things about this is that you've got such a variety of choices for your pasta too, even more than I have shown here. It's usually done with macaroni, which I do not have. I'm going to be doing the elbows today, so you can see what they look like. You can also go with this one, which I will butcher the real name. I call it the curlicues. Classic shells. The rotini. The little DNA strand looking ones. Or penne. Now, you do want smaller ones and you don't want something like a spaghetti because a long stringy pasta is not going to work too well. Basically anything that's the right size to fit on a bowl and have a nice bite in your mouth is great. Just make sure that you pay attention to how much the cooking time is, because they're all different. And we're going to be cooking these in the soup. So when you're going to get ready for them, you're going to be boiling the broth and having them cook in there. So you want to make sure that you don't have any of those things that can cook down to mush at that point. So plan accordingly. Okay, we're dicing the onion today. So trick it with the bulb still on there to keep it together. And you're just going to angle. Going right up to the bulb, not cutting through it. That way it sticks together. Okay, and then once you have that, Just go down, big or small pieces as you want. And that's it. Now to the next step. So when we're doing the zucchini, we're going to do it in wedges today. So wash it off as usual. Chop off the ends. Go down the middle. This one's a big one, so if it's smaller, just go again in a quarter and dice this way. But since this is so big, I'm going to go into 3 strips. You want them to be a little bit bigger since there's going to be cooking down in the soup. That's always a good idea. That way it doesn't just dissolve away. So we'll finish that and work on the next part. Okay, so we've already diced the onion and we've done the zucchini. So now that we're going to do the celery. Celery I haven't done on this channel before, so depending on how big you want it, you can take one of the ribs and you can slice it down the center if you want smaller pieces. If you don't, keep them as is, and what you're going to do is you're going to cut them on a bias for this so that they're a little bit longer. So instead of straight up and down to the side. And however big you want the pieces for your soup. Now on this particular one, I'm leaving in these leaves because I do like them floating around in my minestrone. If you want to have just regular without the leaves, that's fine too. But it does have a nice extra flavor. It's a little different than the stock. So now that we're done with all of that and everything's prepped, we're going to go and start the cooking process. Okay, so we're going to start by doing the sausages. So some of the fat we'll go ahead and render out and add to the oil that we're about to put in. That way you get nice and coated when you go in with your vegetables. So you want this on a medium-high heat. Go ahead and start it heating before you put it in. It doesn't have to be super hot when you put it in, but get the sausages going. And these are pre-cooked already. So you don't need to have them in here too long, just enough to get them to loosen up. And like I said, have some of that fat come out. Just stir them around. Do this for about 2 minutes, and then we're going to throw in the vegetables. Okay, now that these have been going for 2 minutes, you can see that they're getting nice and brown. So we're going to lower the heat and add in the vegetables. And we're going to do those for about 3 minutes until the onions start becoming translucent. Now I'm adding the carrots, the onions, the celery, and the zucchinis. You can hold off on the zucchinis if you want, since they're already like a little soft. If you want to add those after you do the boiling, that's fine. It's just up to you on how firm or soft you want them to be. So we're going to go ahead and lower. And then dump the vegetables in. Like I said, stir that around for 2 minutes. Mix it up with the sausages. And you don't need to stir it constantly, but do keep it moving. And after that, we're going to add some garlic, cook that a little longer, and then we're going to put in the stock. These are starting to cook down pretty good, and since we will be boiling these, you don't want them completely done, but as you can see, onions are picking up some nice color. So now we're going to go in with the garlic. However much you want. I like garlic, so I'm doing a big old teaspoon. Sorry, that was a tablespoon. I've done that twice now. And a little bit more. We're just going to cook this for 30 seconds. Just moving it around, making sure it's all evenly distributed. Trying to get a little toast on them. Now, if you've been cooking these and you get any of those brown bits on the bottom, that's fine. We'll be deglazing. And you can do one of two things if you're deglazing. You can just use the broth. Just put a little in before and just scrape all that good stuff off the bottom. It's the same principle if you want to go in with the red wine. You don't need too much. If you're doing it just for flavor, you don't want too much more than just a splush like that either. And if you're at all worried, yes, the alcohol will burn off when you're boiling because alcohol has a lower evaporation rate than water. So if your water's evaporating and boiling, then so will the alcohol, and then you'll just be left with the flavor. When you go to put in the rest of the broth, you can do one of two things. It takes a little bit to come out. It doesn't really kind of clugs. So if you take your thing like this and you cut, you get a little hole there. And the reason you're doing this is because that way the air is not trying to come out of the same hole as the water. So let me show you how that works. See how much nicer it pours? You can also do a spiral if you didn't cut the hole in. That was stupid. But the spiral motion makes it so that the bubbles in the liquid pass evenly. It'll empty a lot faster if you do that. So I'm going to go ahead and clean this up. I do keep the mistakes in the video so you can see what not to do. That one was just stupid. Next thing before the actual boil is I put the tomatoes in there. And you're not going to drain them. You want to have the liquid in there. And this is where we have to make a choice. Because since I spilled some of that, and we have so many vegetables, this is pretty darn thick. And we're going to put in some other stuff still too. So if you're wanting to, this is the time where you put in some more broth. And that's up to you. The pasta will absorb some of the broth if you're having this for more than one day. So it's better to have a little extra, in my opinion. I'd say about half of one of these, and these are 4 cups, so 2 cups. All right. Now that that's all done, we're going to move the heat back up. And once the water starts boiling, we're going to drop the pasta in. Okay, now that that's boiling, we're going to go ahead and add in our pasta. As much as or as little as you want. I try not to do anywhere close to a whole box. I usually go with like 1/4 to 1/2. Stir it around and you can see about how much of the pasta is in there. I'll put just a few more pieces, but they do swell up later, so don't go overboard. And once the pasta is in there, you can bring this down to a medium to medium-high heat. You just want to keep the boil going. And this one is going to cook between 7 and 8 minutes. Make sure you check on your package and set yourself a timer. And then you can pretty much let this be for the next little while. I would say though, make sure you watch it because sometimes that starch will come off. You know, when you make pasta and it starts bubbling up. So you can watch that. I've heard a trick where you put a wooden spoon across the top. It's supposed to break the surface tension if those bubbles come up. I haven't done it before where I've needed it to do that, but I'm going to try that now and I'll report back to you on how well that works. Okay, the pasta's been going for the 7 minutes. Did not need a spoon, it didn't boil over. So one day I'll find out if that trick works or not. So when you give it a stir around, you see there's quite a bit of pasta in there. So let's check one of them. Make sure to blow on it so you don't burn your mouth. Yep, nice and soft. So now we're going to take the temperature and we're going to bring it down to a simmer. Now, this is where I'm going to add a little bit more of the stock. That'll cool it down a little too. Okay, now we're going to go in with our spices. Just like everything else, as much or as little as you want. So we're starting with the Italian blend. And that has basically all the same stuff we're going to add. So up to you. Now we're going to try some basil in there. Not too much, it's a very powerful one. Next we're going to go in with the rosemary. My family, we really like rosemary, so we're going to do quite a bit of that. Didn't realize this one wasn't open, sorry. Okay. Now we're going to go in with the oregano. And once again, up to your taste. We really like the Italian flavor, so that's what we're doing. Now this one's thyme, and thyme you kind of want to crush. It releases some of the flavors. Put that in. Then we're going to add the pepper. Not too much. A couple little shakes. Now I usually do the salt to taste, but if you wanted to add salt, this is where you would do it. And we're going to stir this around. Let all those things start hydrating. And we're also going to go in with our spinach at this point, because we'll still have the residual heat from the boil, so it won't cook down too much, but it does cook down, so don't worry. That'll get smaller, the pieces will get smaller as we go. So maybe 2 small handfuls. Oh, that wasn't a poltergeist, that was a kitchen helper. I dropped a piece of spinach, I didn't know she liked those. No, I didn't. You can see they're already getting smaller. Okay, so now that we have all that in there, last thing we're going to do is add the beans. I would say maybe a half a can of beans. It all depends on how much you want. Like I said, these are leftovers from when I made nachos the other day. I usually do kidney beans, but any bean works. Then lastly, the frozen peas. Once again, however much you want. That's why I like minestrone. You can put as much or as little vegetable in it as you want. You can make it as thick as you want, as thin as you want. It's delicious. So we're just going to simmer this for 2 to 3 minutes. Let the flavors from the spices get hydrated and get throughout the soup. Heat up the peas, and then it is going to be time to eat. Okay, now that we're done, it's simmered. All the flavors have been moving around. You can see it's nice and thick. So we're going to go ahead and plate it up and serve. Just in case of spillage, I tend to do that over the bowl. There you can see how nice and thick and full of nice vegetables that is. Oh, and you cannot forget, you can always add some Parmesan or some mozzarella like I'm doing. And what would it be without some nice bread as well? Oh, gotta pay the cheese tax, hold on. And that is our dinner. Thank you so much for watching and happy eating.